For most of human history, we were not the rulers of the planet. We were a small and vulnerable species living in Africa, among predators stronger, faster, and better armed than us. We had no cities, no farms, no armies. Humans would spread across every continent, survive the Ice Age, build civilizations, and transform the entire planet. How did we do it across this series? We will follow that journey step by step, from our origins in Africa to the modern world. This is the story of humanity.
About 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens reached the colder latitudes of Europe. At Rennes in present-day Germany, human remains and tools show that our species was already living near the edge of the northern steppe during severe cold. They did not enter a permanently frozen planet. The late Pleistocene swung between colder and milder phases. Forest could retreat, grassland could spread, and animal routes could shift within a few generations, turning remembered landscapes into dangerous misinformation. The harshest phase came much later. The last glacial maximum lasted roughly from 26,500 to 19,000 years ago. Ice sheets expanded across northern Europe and North America, while huge areas farther south became cold, dry, treeless steppe. So much water was locked in ice that global sea level fell by more than 120 meters. The North Sea basin became dry land, Britain joined continental Europe, and the Bering region formed a broad landscape rather than a narrow strait. Yet lower sea level did not make the world easy. Winter temperatures, wind, hunger, injury, and isolation could kill quickly. The real question is not whether humans were tough, but how they built a survival system faster than biology could evolve. The answer was culture: fitted clothing, controlled fire, engineered shelters, calorie-rich food, planned hunting, long-distance alliances, and accumulated knowledge. Humans survived cold by carrying a small artificial climate around their vulnerable bodies. A naked human loses heat rapidly because skin and limbs expose a large surface area. Wind removes the warm boundary layer around the body, while wet hide or clothing conducts heat away far faster than dry insulating air. When core temperature begins to fall, blood vessels in hands and feet narrow to protect the brain, heart, and lungs. That buys time, but sacrifices dexterity. A hunter who cannot tie a thong, strike a spark, or hold a spear is already in danger. Shivering generates heat through rapid muscle contractions, but it consumes precious energy. In a glacial environment, walking, carrying meat, and maintaining body temperature all compete for calories. Hunger and cold therefore reinforced each other. Hypothermia also damages judgment. Confusion, clumsy movement, and false confidence can appear before collapse. Survival depended on companions noticing these signs, because the cold person might no longer understand how serious the danger had become. Children lose heat faster than adults because their bodies are smaller. Infants cannot walk to generate heat and depend entirely on carried insulation, nursing, and shared shelter. Protecting them required constant labor from the whole group. Over many generations, cold region populations did develop average differences in body proportions and metabolism, but no human population evolved fur. The decisive adaptation remained technological. People changed clothing and behavior within days, not millennia. Neanderthals had lived in Ice Age Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans arrived. Their stocky bodies conserved heat, yet they too relied on fire, shelters, tools, and animal skins. Cold survival was never purely biological. Warm shelters created a second problem: smoke. A sealed space held heat but trapped carbon particles and moisture. Hearth placement, roof openings, and the direction of the entrance had to balance warmth, ventilation, and fire safety. Clothing rarely survives, so archaeologists reconstruct it from tools. In northern China, bone awls appear by about 35,000 years ago, and eyed needles by roughly 30,000 years ago. Such tools made tightly fitted seams possible. A loose skin cape leaves gaps at the neck, wrists, and waist. Tailored sleeves, leggings, hoods, mittens, and boots trap still air close to the body. In severe cold, the quality of a seam could determine whether fingers remained usable. Fresh hide is heavy, wet, and soon stiffens. It had to be scraped, stretched, repeatedly worked, treated with fat or smoke, and repaired after use. Every winter outfit represented many hours of skilled preparation completed before the cold arrived. Fur worn inward trapped warm air. An outer hide could block wind and snow. Dry grass, moss, or additional fur could insulate boots. Layering also allowed people to remove clothing during heavy work before sweat made the inner layers dangerously wet. Fire was older than Homo sapiens, but glacial survival demanded reliability. People selected dry fuel, protected tinder, transported glowing embers, and built hearths that could be revived after travel. Losing fire in a storm could become an emergency. On treeless steppe, wood was limited. People burned shrubs, bone, and possibly dried animal dung where necessary. Fuel choice influenced smoke, heat, and cooking time, so camps could not simply stop anywhere and expect a convenient forest. Caves offered rock walls and protection from wind, but they were scarce, damp, or already occupied by bears and hyenas. Most Ice Age life therefore happened in open-air camps, whose organic walls, roofs, and bedding rarely survived archaeologically. At sites in Ukraine, including Mezherich, people later built circular structures using mammoth bones, with hides probably forming the roof. These were not crude piles. Arranging skulls, jaws, and long bones required planning and collective labor. At Dolní Věstonice, in present-day Czechia, people lived about 30,000 years ago in a substantial settlement near mammoth herds. Hearths, pits, tools, ornaments, and fired clay objects reveal repeated occupation, specialized work, and social organization. Winter technology survived only through maintenance. Wet boots had to be dried without scorching, torn seams repaired immediately, and bedding replaced before it became damp. The dramatic hunt depended on quiet hours of routine work inside camp. Cold raised the price of every movement. A large adult could require far more energy during hard winter travel than at rest. The safest food was therefore not simply meat, but food rich in fat, marrow, organs, brains, and fatty tissue. Humans cannot live indefinitely on very lean meat alone. When fat and carbohydrate are scarce, the liver struggles to process enormous protein loads. Hunters therefore valued the fattest animals and the fattest parts, especially in late winter. At Ranis, animal remains show that early modern humans exploited reindeer, horses, rhinoceros, and other cold-adapted fauna. They were not merely enduring the environment. They understood its animals well enough to find food in a high-latitude winter landscape. Large game delivered huge returns but could disappear. Resilient groups also used fish, birds, hares, roots, seeds, and stored plants when available. Archaeology preserves stone and bone better than baskets, nets, and wooden traps, so diets looked narrower than they were. Cooking softened connective tissue, released fat, and made frozen food easier to digest. Stones heated in a fire could warm liquid in hide or bark containers. Roasting, boiling, and marrow extraction increased the usable energy from each carcass. A single mammoth or bison produced more meat than one family could eat quickly. Cold helped preservation, but thaws and scavengers remained dangerous. Drying racks, smoke, freezing, and protected caches converted a brief success into weeks of security. Good hunters planned months ahead. They followed calving grounds, river crossings, and seasonal migration corridors. Camp location balanced fuel, water, shelter, and access to animals. Moving too late could mean arriving after the herds had already passed. Food shortages were especially dangerous for pregnant and nursing women. Infants depended on maternal calories and constant warmth. Sharing the richest foods was not charity. It protected the next generation and the future labor force of the group. Wolves, lions, and hyenas also wanted the carcass. Butchering teams had to work fast while armed lookouts watched the perimeter. A successful kill could attract danger from kilometers away through scent, calls, and circling scavenger birds. Nothing valuable was casually discarded. Sinew became cord, hide became clothing and shelter, bone became tools or fuel, teeth became ornaments, and grease could waterproof materials. A carcass was food, hardware, insulation, and stored labor at once. The famous image of one man charging a mammoth is misleading. Large animal hunting depended on terrain, timing, and teamwork. Hunters tried to reduce uncertainty before approaching an animal powerful enough to crush a person with one movement. Some hunters drove animals toward narrow valleys, marshy ground, or waiting ambushes. Others blocked escape routes. The objective was not heroic combat, but controlled movement, separating one vulnerable animal while preserving enough distance to survive. By the Upper Paleolithic, spear throwers increased the speed and reach of hunting darts. A lever added power without requiring the hunter to stand directly beside the animal. Replaceable stone or bone points made damaged weapons repairable. Tracking meant reading more than footprints. Dung revealed freshness and diet. Broken crust showed direction. Hair on branches marked passage. Herd spacing suggested alarm. Skilled trackers combined many weak clues into one constantly revised prediction. Wind carried human scent and changed projectile flight. Snow could preserve a trail perfectly, then erase it in minutes. Hunters had to understand local weather at the scale of a valley, not simply know that winter was cold. Archaeological skeletons include people who survived serious fractures and disabilities. Healing proves that someone fed them, protected them, and often helped them move. In a small band, losing an experienced adult could cost more than supporting recovery. After a kill, the problem changed from hunting to logistics. Hundreds of kilograms had to be cut, guarded, and transported before freezing weather, predators, or distance defeated the group. Sometimes the best decision was to leave low-value weight behind. Experience also meant abandoning bad opportunities. A long chase could burn more energy than the meat would return. Hunters who recognized unfavorable wind, unstable ice, or an alert herd survived more often than those who attacked every chance. Ice Age survival was not a story of hunters alone. Children gathered fuel and learned tracks. Adults made clothing, preserved food, and built shelters. Older people remembered routes and rare disasters. Every age group contributed different forms of labor. A remembered spring under snow, a sheltered pass, or the year a river froze late could save lives decades later. Knowledge was stored in people, stories, and repeated journeys. The death of one expert could erase an entire local map. Stone, shells, and ornaments often traveled far from their geological sources. Such finds show that groups exchanged materials and information across large distances. A network could warn of failed hunting grounds or provide refuge after local disaster. These meetings also allowed people to find partners beyond a tiny local band. Without wider contact, repeated close-kin unions would become dangerous. Social networks were therefore routes for food, information, technology, and genes at the same time. Food sharing spread risk across time. A family with meat today might fail next week. An injured hunter could later depend on someone else's success. Generosity created obligations, reputation, and a survival insurance system without formal institutions. Information had to be reliable. A false report about a herd or pass could endanger dozens of people. Individuals known for accurate tracking, fair exchange, and fulfilled promises became valuable partners, while repeated deception carried serious costs. Complex skills cannot be reinvented every winter. Children practiced scraping hides, shaping stone, and reading tracks under supervision. Teaching transformed one person's discovery into group property and allowed technology to improve cumulatively across generations. Keeping an infant warm, chewing food for a child, cleaning a wound, and carrying an injured adult all consumed calories. Yet repeated evidence of survival after trauma shows that dependence was normal, not exceptional, in human communities. At Chauvet Cave in southern France, some animal images date to more than 30,000 years ago. Lions, rhinoceroses, bears, and horses were rendered with close observation. This was not idle decoration. It required light, pigment, planning, and shared access underground. Portable carvings, beads, and decorated clothing moved with their owners. At gatherings, they could signal identity, skill, age, or alliance. In a mobile world without flags or documents, objects carried social information across landscapes. At Dolny-Viestonis, a famous triple burial about 30,000 years old placed three young people together beneath red ochre. Whatever the exact meaning, the burial shows deliberate ritual and social attention even in a demanding glacial environment. At Sungir in Russia, burials around 34,000 years old contained thousands of ivory beads, spears, and other objects. Producing those beads required enormous labor, showing that Ice Age communities invested time in status, memory, and ceremony. Bone flutes from European Upper Paleolithic sites show that music existed tens of thousands of years ago. Rhythm and song could coordinate movement, strengthen bonds, and structure long winter gatherings when travel and hunting were limited. Stories and ritual also organized memory. A narrative about a dangerous pass, a respected animal, or a failed hunt could preserve practical lessons inside emotion. Meaning did not replace food or clothing, but it helped groups cooperate under stress. No single invention conquered the cold. Clothing failed without repair. Fire failed without fuel. Hunting failed without sharing. Knowledge failed without networks. Human survival emerged from a linked system in which each solution protected the others. During the last glacial maximum, many populations concentrated in more habitable refuges, including parts of southern Europe and sheltered regions farther east. Later warming allowed renewed expansion, but some earlier lineages disappeared, and others contributed to future populations. After about 19,000 years ago, the great ice sheets began a long retreat. Warming did not simply improve life. Rivers changed, forests replaced open steppe, familiar herds moved, and rising seas drowned vast coastal plains where people had lived. Between the glacial maximum and the mid-Holocene, sea level rose more than 120 meters. Countless camps, shorelines, and travel routes now lie underwater. That missing evidence means our picture is biased toward caves, stone tools, and inland sites. Many large Ice Age animals later vanished, although timing and causes differed by region. Climate change, human hunting, and ecological disruption interacted in complex ways. People who had mastered Mammoth Steppe had to redesign their economies again. The deepest Ice Age adaptation was not a thicker body or one perfect weapon. It was the ability to combine inventions, cooperate with non-relatives, teach children, and change plans when the environment changed. Human specialization was flexibility itself. Long residence in different climates did leave biological traces. Skin pigmentation, body proportions, hair, metabolism, and other traits changed in frequency as populations separated and mixed. The next episode asks why humans came to look different while remaining one species. This is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to hearing you again in the next episode.